Well, to the very germane topic which we are on. I mean, labor unions have, since time in antiquity, been existing for a while now through medieval time, among other issues. At some point in time, they had a lot of struggle in actually building the momentum that we have today, which has actually solidified them to where they are. And you know that in the Industrial Revolution, they became a very strong force because of labor essence and the demand for labor. Now, the very famous Haymarket Affair of 1886, which led to May Day, which is Labor Day, tells us how far and to the extent to which labor unions have come this far. But there are different kinds of labor unions where we have essential service providers, among other issues. Then we have health, right? So when it comes to health, it becomes a very sensitive issue, especially so given the services. And I'm sure Doc would agree with me. He has been a unionist, he has been a lawyer, he's a lawyer and a doctor at the same time, so I don't know which one he wants to go with. But you would realize that these are very critical issues that come to the fore. But where I come from, having been a member of government, is that we've come far from a very difficult economic position in the last 1 year or so, where, if you look at our economic dashboard, it was quite messy. You had a central bank posting losses, you have a domestic debt exchange program, you had blue chip investments such as pensions that have been touched, among other issues. So we really had a very overheated economy that is yet to even cool off. So if we are coming from the back of this, and we have been greeted with a very important issue such as this, the only way we can have a strong solution is to come to the table and have a jaw-jaw among ourselves, which I think that if we hadn't really had this jaw-jaw approach, we would not even be where we are with the strike action. Now, when you look at all those that are experts in labor union agitations, among other issues, right, you'll realize that they strike where it hurts most. So you even see the short-lived action that the nurses took, the OPD, which is a critical operations of a health facility, was affected for 5 days. And cumulatively, we had an 11-day action. But in all of this, I don't want us to look at it from a political lens. We have to look at it from a practical economic perspective, an economic lens. And that economic lens is where I am coming from, which is the economic history for the last 1-2 years to which we have come from. I mean, examples of COVID-19 could be made, but we all know the support we got internationally from COVID-19. We're not going to get, if the British institution could give us grants to pay doctors and nurses, why not? We'll take it with 2 arms. But that's not going to happen because this is hardcore labor issues and no agency is going to come to our aid as had happened in COVID-19. So we could give a lot of examples as COVID-19. We could laud words like the government being insensitive and callous, but I don't think that is what it is because it is a real engagement of the reality on the ground. I mean, a wage bill of 2 billion. This is what the Deputy Finance Minister said. Look, it's not like we're not going to do this at all, right? Can we have some respite? Can we negotiate and see what we will do? And looking at this, there could be a clear agreement that, where you don't have any payments or disbursements to be made, such as the COS issues, could be addressed. Then can we defer most of these payments to possibly 2026? These are examples I'm giving, by which time the economy might have, bowed, because we're doing a lot of work around it. We're having currency stability at the moment. We're winning or getting some gains as far as the economic stability is concerned. So when we get this, we could do that. Or possibly, if the economy does greater or better, right, before mid-year review, we could accommodate that as well. So these are the very fundamental issues we need to talk about. But to make examples of apple and oranges, as in allocations to government agencies that has been inherited and need to have actual salaries, not allowances, right? So the ISD, the Ministry of Information, among other agencies that the presidency inherited, that ought to have wages. Should we stop their wages at the time of inheritance? So why do we make government allocations or legitimate allocation of funds to these agencies an issue that we have to compare to this and say, okay, someone is being looked after? As we speak,
that point you just made is an attempt to explain what Ejapa Mensah spoke about, that the presidency has increased its budget by over $1 billion.
It is not the presidency.
When it was, that's what you explained.
Yes, that's what I'm explaining. But it's not the presidency increasing its budget.
Because, what do you say is the reason?
I said we have agencies that has been inherited by the presidency that ought to have emoluments being paid. They ought to have end of service benefits being paid, among other issues. Where is this funding going to come from? So if that allocation has been made, I mean, you and I know that Article 71 office holders and other people that work around the presidency, after they leave as well, they have to get some benefits.
So that's why the budget for the presidency has ballooned. I
am giving examples of inherited or legacy institutions, right, that have been added to the presidency or that are under the wing of the presidency. When you say presidency, people just see it as an edifice of the Jubilee House. But it has a broader expansion of other key agencies that surround it, which you know, and the public knows. So when we keep giving that example and try to, compare it to a critical matter such as health, it may not give, positive oxygen to the debate.
But like Mr. Akugu said, they had met the minister. Initially, they were told, we just came into office, give us a breathing space. Then a minister was appointed. They approached the minister. The minister says, wait for the budget. That was sort of an assurance that it will reflect in the budget. Then the budget comes, they don't find that, they cry, you say, it's not provided in the budget. Let's wait for 2026.
No, you see,
that's bad faith.
No, I wouldn't call it bad faith. As I said, you inherit. How old is a government? 5 months, heading off to a 6th month, right? You take over office, and I gave you a background example of what has happened. So when you want to read a budget, you have stakeholder engagements. And these stakeholder engagements, they come out to say, okay, we all need X, Y, Z. Right. It is not that government, they are all insatiable. And it's not that government is in a position to say.
The point is that this was agreed.
No, they said.
And left for government to implement.
Yes.
And so when you inherit the government, you inherited this.
And we haven't thrown that away. We haven't said that we are not even going to pay at all.
So why do you now think that it's not been provided for in the budget, so wait for 2026?
No, but when you inherit something, right, and you don't have the muscle power to do it at the right time, you have to negotiate to defer. People take bank loans, right? At some point, they have to go back to the banks to even negotiate to have repayment conditions, among other issues. We are not saying this is a critical issue, right? We respect nurses, we respect healthcare workers, and there've not been any official government position insulting nurses or health workers.
That's correct.
Right? They've not been, let's put it on record, they've not been any.
Except some people think that inviting retired nurses is an insult.
Oh, well, you see, what I said is that, when it comes to the negotiation table with labor union, Samson, tempers may flare, strategies may be ignited, among other issues. When I told you that they were very strategic in, going after the OPD, which is a very essential component of a hospital functionality, right? If a health minister says that, okay, in the spur of the moment, this is what we could consider also doing, because the government would also have to have some leverage. It's a negotiation table, right? It's not a jungle. So if they're saying that, okay, well, did they bring retired nurses? Obviously not, right? Nobody brought retired nurses.
No, they were asked to volunteer.
Right.
They obviously didn't show up.
But you see, Doc, let me just put in a little clarity, something if you permit me. You see, the OPD, as far as we are concerned, within the health sector, a very key part of our operations. But it is not the most critical. So usually, when these strikes are happening, you realize that the first area, which is like the low-hanging fruit, where most likely very little by way of casualties will happen, is the OPD. So kindly hold on. So usually you see that it starts with the OPD withdrawal, which offers government or the employer enough room to deal with the issues.
Which they did for 5 days.
Yes. 5 days.
Post that, then the critical areas, emergencies, as in the emergency rooms, the wards, the theaters, the ICUs are all deserted. And that is where most of the deaths will even occur.
So your point is that for the first 5 days, they should have resolved this issue.
Exactly.
Because they had not done a total withdrawal.
Yes, but you sat and got to a point where we had a total withdrawal.
I don't think...
You see, kindly hold on. You see, I have experienced these things. And I think that as a nation, we should begin to look at the way we do things. Look, for me, in as much as nobody advocates that we should have strikes in the health sector, as and when it happens, people talk about the legality or otherwise of it. I always have my view. Something knows. Maybe we'll discuss it later. However, the moment the strikes happen, if we ultimately prioritize the lives of every Ghanaian, I tell you what, we should be able to resolve the issues within 2-3 days.
Even if the strikes happen in breach of law, we should still
when you say breach of law, now let me address this. I always disagree with you because, see, the employment contract is one of service, not slavery.
That's correct.
Now, if you have a situation where government or the employer wants to hide behind so-called legalities, I'm saying so-called legalities in the sense that the very prescriptions in the Labor Act that put certain mandates on you, the employer, you refuse to do them. So that in itself is a breach of that contract from your end. However, you expect the other side to continue to function as if your breach doesn't matter. In that process, you are turning into one of slavery.
When you are building a civilized country,
yes,
leaders like you, officers like nurses,
yes,
must be seen to obey the law.
And that is why they will almost always engage the employer, not for days, not for weeks, but months to years. In my situation, there were times that specific issues we have dealt with the employer for at least 2 years on one single issue. So you see, it is what happens at the other side that is never brought to the fore that makes it look as if these workers end up being
I think then using the technology. And Doc, a side comment, assessing the Labour Commission and how it works. I actually have a paper on it for my LLM. I did a paper criticizing them, the way the government hides behind them to do some of those. So it's not an opinion I hold, which is against the way you do it.
When you say the government hides under the Labour law, I want to believe that these commissions are independent.
They are not wholly independent.
I am saying that I want to believe.
If you appear before them, you realize that they are not wholly independent.
Well, I am saying that I want to believe that they are independent in their creation.
That's what they should be.
That's the creation.
And their functionality.
No.
Yeah. That's your opinion.
Yes.
So, well, when you look at it, but to use the word slavery is an extreme terminology to use in this context of discussion because I don't think it even.
What I'm saying that if you slavery, then you are turning it into one of slavery. It's my turn because it's been abolished. No, do the right thing. So let it be one of service.
He's speaking a principle of law that lawyers use in labor law.
Yes.
That the contract of employment is not one of servitude.
Yes,
it's not slavery.
Of service.
Yeah, of course, of service. But that's what I'm saying. But to replace that with slavery, among other issues, tend to actually put the matter in a very extreme light, which is where we are not.
So what can they look up to?
So what they look up to, we are negotiating, right? And I told you that within the negotiation table, right, or context of negotiation,
you are not. It is Parliament.
What is Parliament then? Because they refer to the committee, the health committee. No, that's not Parliament.
They made the intervention,
right? No,
it wasn't the executive.
No, government made the intervention as well. Right? When negotiations happen, it's not everything that is brought to the fore to say that this is what is happening. Right? And it is not all of the arsenal of negotiation that you put out there, but what you have as your strength, you put it on the table, and what is known to the public, you put it on the table. But as I speak with you, there's loads of negotiations ongoing behind the scenes as to how we can get this situation resolved, number one, and get restoration and normalcy within the health space. As we speak now, Closac is warming up. Right? You could hear the human sounds of that. So if you have a 5-month-old government who have had all this history, right, of, economic issues that it inherited and is trying to stabilize an economy. So what it needs to do is to, as it may, engage and say, okay, well, these are the issues. But in any case, can we, all of us sitting on the table, are we saying that we are oblivious of the fact that this was the economic trajectory we came from in the last 1-2 years? No, not at all. We came from a very overheated, boiling economy.
Are you hopeful that by 26th of June, some good news will come out rather than we hear a resumption of the strike? And at the police hospital, they told us that they saw only in 1 week, they saw over 300% increase in the number of patients who visited to access medical care.
Well, I mean, all of these increases would happen. And that's what I'm saying. These are all strategies when it comes to strike actions and negotiations. The numbers ought to be put there to know that, okay, well, we are hitting the right places or we are getting the numbers in. So when all of these negotiations happen, we need to rather contextualize rather than weaponize them as political tools to use to disarm political opponents or to make political capital out of it. When we do that, we all lose sight of the fact. This is not the first time nurses are going on strike. under a particular government. Different governments would come and go. So let's look at it. When we say we are resetting, we're looking at it from a national perspective, a holistic perspective.
Okay.
So for me, my appeal on this table and beyond is that can we have that engagement devoid, right, of weaponizing terminologies, you deploying them in political, armory style, trying to justify cases or make a government look bad. No. We have come a long way as far as the economy is concerned. Let's rally together to see how we can put a sustainable measure to this.